Grieving is a process, not an event. It can take years, in some cases, a lifetime. But if you juxtapose that grief with expectations of joy and celebration at holiday times, the grief can intensify. Am I saying that joy and sadness can't coexist? Actually, no, they must. The question is, what if we just need to create an atmosphere where those who are grieving can accept that the coexistence of joy and sadness is natural, normal, and acceptable? Grieving people sometimes fear being happy at celebrations when the one that they love is no longer with them to share it. Even the best of times will be seen from now on through the filter of an awareness that someone is missing. One of the biggest mistakes that you and I can make sometimes is to try to cheer up a grieving person. Now, if sadness were an enemy, I'd say cheer away. But what if sadness has a purpose? See, as a Christian, I believe that we are legally separated from God by sin. Sin lives in us and is a legal reality that I'm guilty, you're guilty before a holy God. Sadness just punctuates the reality of the gospel, that we can be sad about sin and the brokenness of the world, but that this sadness can magnify the joy that we have that God did something about that brokenness. He sent Christ to die a substitutionary death, our death that we deserved, taken on by the only one in history who did not deserve it. That's why the good news is called good news. Did you know that? What about my grieving person? They're going to be here in 10 minutes. I'll get there. First thing to do is stop asking how you doing. Often when we ask that, it hits them like a demand for the perfect response, creating an uncomfortable tension between what they feel and what they think others want to hear. Especially when some of popular and even church culture has errantly taught people to fake it till you make it. How about you ask them, hey, good, bad, or ugly, how does this gathering make you think and feel about the person that you lost? Do you see that pressure to give a pat answer is removed? How you've invited them to empty their sadness, their hurting heart? The Bible actually says that those who refresh others shall themselves be refreshed. In fact, if you read the book of Job, you'll find that 3 of Job's friends said horrible, foolish, and awkward things to him after he lost everything but his wife and his life. But in the beginning of the story, they did one thing right. They sat with him and said nothing for several days. Good news, less is more. You can help the grieving person you love often with few or no words at all. When asked how they're doing, grieving people have a tendency to answer something like fine, good, or better, even though it may not really be true. They're going up and down. What if you ask them something like, is there anything about the grieving the loss of Joan or Bob or so over that you find frustrating these days? Or how's your grieving going lately? And then shut your mouth. Let them talk and know that they're heard. Follow up with a statement like, wow, it sounds like you feel... and fill in the blank with a quick synopsis of what they just told you. That will beat the daylights out of, I know how you feel. You don't. And if you don't know that the gospel is good news, please know this. You don't have to be a good person to go to heaven. You need to be a forgiven person. And the only 2 ways there are to be forgiven enough to be marked not guilty in the courtroom of God are A, spend eternity paying for your sin in the lake of fire, or B, confessing with your mouth that Christ is Lord and believing in your heart that God raised him from the dead. It's a simple exchange of submitting to his means of grace instead of how hard you can work to prove that you're a good person. Will you trust that his payment was enough? Will you try to let sadness and joy coexist for the healing of those around you? Happy Thanksgiving, good Yontif, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Grace, peace, agape, and shalom.